All right, my stream on Saturday got interrupted because I had to go help one of my relatives. It was very important, and something awful happened later on that same day. So, um, there was a part of me that was really tempted to come back on Saturday, but I was with my brother, so I couldn't. I guess I could have, but I felt that um, it could either be picked up today or it could be picked up Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday of next week. Just stuff like that of this week, I guess. Um, I guess I see this stream as kind of a continuation of the one we did back in maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, the Legacy and Remembrance one, where we talked about how there are a lot of people that have done important things that are neglected, and you always you admit that, yeah, you can't make someone like universally well known because you always have like children that forget, adults that don't care, stuff like that. But what's worse is when it comes from people who are supposedly into the things in which this person had some involvement with. So, for example, um, we were talking about how with my best friend, he's into like different Marvel movies, like the MCU and whatnot. It's like, okay, but then you don't know who made most of the characters, because I can understand if it's like 10, 20, 30 different people, but it's pretty much just two. And if you want to throw Steve Ditko in there, three guys. Um, So when you look at something like that, and it's not the idea that someone doesn't know who this person is or these people are just by happenstance, but rather the fact that they claim to be interested in the thing in which that person played some very significant or important role. So I gave the example of how, for example, my the example for example, I'm being redundant, but I give the example of my mother doesn't like comic books, so I don't expect her to know who made any superheroes, who the directors of any of the movies are, or the actors, because that's something she's never been interested in. She doesn't see any of the only one she ever saw, as far as I can remember, is well, we can probably figure out which one that was. I'll give you a hint. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, and every single black person went to see it. It's not even just them. It's like I'm talking to a guy who says he's this big diehard X-Men fan, and then he didn't even know who Chris Claremont was. And I was like, "Sir, that's the writer that stayed on the book for 15 years. He has one of the longest comic book runs in the industry's history." And it's like, again, if this person was not a self-proclaimed fan of this team, I wouldn't care if he didn't know who the longest running, almost indisputably most influential writer associated with them is. But anyways, just to give you another example that's not related to, well, it still kind of is on the same thing, but not really. I was talking to this guy last year who actually used to be a member of my channel before he told a trillion lies about me, and we were discussing, I think, the like which actors from Star Wars were the most famous, and I mentioned, like other than Christopher Lee, I'd say Harrison Ford's probably the most famous one, or like the one that's like most well known outside of being in Star Wars. And his response was like, "Oh, who's Harrison Ford again?" And then like tried to justify not knowing, remembering who he was by virtue of him not being someone who's into actors. And I'm like, but you know, this isn't just any old actor. This is an individual who has been part of two of the most influential film series of all time. Star Wars and Indiana Jones. He's been in Blade Runner. This is someone who has a lot of very prominent roles that I would have he's easily one of the most influential actors of the last 40 years, 30 years. So also the same person was able to remember, who Mark Hamill was, for example. And you could argue that's because he plays Joker and, different DC stuff. But uh, again, it's that same thing of like, okay, you claim you don't know much about this, but then you still are able to mention these other people who are, I would say, indisputably lesser known. Like, look, if he didn't know who Carrie Fisher was, I would completely get it. She really, the only thing she did that's like really talked about outside of Star Wars is being on Family Guy for a few episodes. if he didn't know, I don't know, James Earl Jones, I would kind of get that one as well. But it's like Ford is easily the like hell. I would have less of an issue of you knowing who he is, and not even George Lucas. You know, that's the one person. It's like he's easily the most famous out of anybody that's been associated with this series. So again, other than maybe Christopher Lee, which by the way, that was the person I used for a thumbnail because my best friend didn't know who he was, and I was like, there we go back to that thing of like, oh, I don't care, I don't know much about actors. Like, yeah, but it's not just any other actor. This is someone who had a 70-year career. That if you've seen any successful film that was made prior to like the early, let's say mid 2000s, right? That's not Marvel. You probably saw something with him in it. He was in Dracula, the was that 1958 version, Lord of the Rings. Obviously the episode 2 and 3 of the prequel trilogy for Star Wars. Like that is a very significant actor who um, I think if you do any like greatest actors of all time list, you would be remiss to not include him on it. It was like a really nutty thing to me because again, it's not some random guy who doesn't care about this stuff. It's someone who likes Star Wars, who saw multiple films this man was in, and then doesn't know who he is. Apparently, he saw Lord of the Rings too. Like I haven't even seen Lord of the Rings, and I acknowledge its historical significance, like its success. Like with Harry Potter, where it's like I'm not interested in it, but I can still look at it and say, hey, this is something that is influential, that is objectively important. It's so sad. I always go back to that one time I had those Ramirez harpies, like his groupies, right? Come on my video and say that you're that what was it, that he's a legend that will go down in the history books, which I don't agree with because like the only three like murderers that people actually like keep talking about are like Gacy, Bundy, and Dahmer. Uh, and that I was like a nobody who will be forgotten the day I die, or some kind of like nasty thing. And it was funny to like think about that and go, well, the thing is, even if you're important, you still get forgotten by people. So like all of these different people are bringing up way more important than me, and they get forgotten, even by people who claim to be into the stuff that they made or were involved with. So it's not that far. Like it's kind of ironic now of like thinking just how even people who are important get forgotten, like they're not even remembered. I don't even want to get on the political stuff. My friend was like, I don't even want to bother with that because you're gonna just start thinking like, is he living under a rock? But you get the irony, right? Oh, you're a nobody that'll be forgotten today. That's like, yeah, but even people who are important are forgotten. So it's like being like universally acknowledged or remembered is almost impossible. And hell, we even talked about there are a lot of people that are remembered that people still don't know that much about. Like I know a lot of children that know who Lincoln is, but they still really don't know that much about him. They don't know about his mother and sister dying prematurely. They don't know about him losing 8 elections before he got elected president. There's just people they have very like surface level knowledge of stuff. So it's like you never can really be that impressed with them. Like, oh, I know who this person is, but I still don't really know anything about them outside of their name and maybe like what their profession was. It was funny. We were talking about this is a stream I did like 2 or 3 years ago. And let me say hello to Akatsuki Merchant because I know he's been waiting for me to respond to him. After he got his promotion, he's looking for some special privileges. But I did this stream about it was I don't remember what the title of it was, but I was talking about like I had somebody get upset with me, and it was like the weirdest thing ever. Where they were like, "Oh, if people made movies about garbage collectors, it would be the same thing." And there's so many people who do that. It would it's like, but I mean, there are literally hundreds I'd say probably thousands of actors, right? But they don't all have the same career. You have some child actors that, for example, do it for a couple of years, then they never pick it up again. You have some actors, like RDJ, for example, who have a lot of success, and then it just completely goes off the rails, and then they come back with some other role and then get famous again, which is what happened with him. Where after he got out of prison, or rather after his just the stuff, the legal issues that he had, he got a career resurgence with Iron Man. So, it's go back to this thing of like, yeah, there are a lot of people who have this career, right? Like this occupation, but the like actual way their career goes is not always the same. It's like there are a lot of politicians, but they don't all get the offices that they want. It's just sad that like there's so many like little distinctions that people have, and then you have these like these other individuals that are like so short-sighted. They don't want to acknowledge like unique specific dynamics that come from you know I guess the same type of position. That's why when me and my best friend were talking, I gave the example of how it's like, yeah, we both went to high school for 4 years, but we didn't have the same experience. Like I went to multiple ones. He went to the same, stayed at the same one. uh you know he had, I think you get what I'm saying, of how it's like, it's even if there's like some similarity, it still has a lot of variances in between. So I just wish people weren't so short-sighted. That's all. It's funny too because it's like you don't see anybody objecting to them making a 900th serial killer biopic, even though those are literally all the same. Like you could make this argument for anything, that all of those are the same as well. Because I mean, they have the basic plot thread of person appears to be normal to everybody else, or most people at least. And then one day it's found out that they were over here, murdering people. But again, there are still variances to stuff like that. Um, I know that with Dean Coral, that's the Candy Man. For example, right? Just to give you an example, was never brought in like to face acknowledgement for his crimes, and it was only learned that he did any of his stuff posthumously after he was murdered by one of his accomplices. So there are still some variances. It's sad that people like don't acknowledge that. They try, because when you start shooting down the idea of speaking on the importance of what happened with someone because it's similar to something that happened to someone else, you basically start to create this idea that a story can only be special or important if it doesn't have any similarities with anything that ever happened to anybody before, which is literally impossible. Imagine actually trying to do that. I'm gonna make a story where nothing has ever been done in it before. Just to get a little bit off topic, that was one of the reasons I really liked Dragon Ball. Like back when I was a kid and just watching stuff on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, all these different other places. You didn't really have a series where the protagonist became an adult over the course of it, like unless it's like the last episode or some kind of final scene or something. And then had a kid, and then the kid was getting more screen time than the original main character, which I don't even like using that term, but you get the idea. It was really gutsy for the time that it came out in. But you could still say that looking back, it has similarities to these other different types of shows, which you would be correct to say. But that still doesn't mean it doesn't have specific unique things that it did that made people like it. So just another example of how you can have similarities to other stuff and then still be something of importance. It is really crazy. Just I guess I always remembered that encounter with that person because I've never seen somebody get that angry at the idea of someone saying, "Yeah, I'd like for a normal, productive member of society to be remembered." It's like of all the things that there was, you get what I'm saying? It's just like of all the things to have an issue with, that's what you draw the line in the sand on. It's like stop remembering people. But again, I'm really glad I brought the different actor examples because it shows you that even people who you can make an objective case have done way more important stuff than most people ever will, right? They still have a very good chance of getting forgotten or ignored or not remembered. And I think that's sad. How dare you want to acknowledge productive members? Dude, Akatsuki merchant. I used to have this saying. I was like, the guy that works a job for 30 years is less likely to be a news story than the person that shoots up a building in a night and kills 30 people. Because we acknowledge and give credit to bad behavior. That was one of the reasons I one of my favorite streams, the top 10 subscriber video, because it acknowledges good behavior. It doesn't say, "Oh, we only pay attention when you do something insane." But no, he really had an issue with that. And it goes back to this thing of how like you're encouraged by society to be what's considered normal, get a job, just do things within the law, all that stuff, right? But then you get like this if you do the bad things, you do things that are not encouraged, you get more acknowledgement for doing that. Like that was one of the reasons I kind of just to go back to the stuff with Wikipedia on that website, the way it works is that if you see an article that is considerably long, like Bundy's page or Gacy's page, usually it was one person. Like it's like it's big, right? But usually what happens is there's one or maybe two people that get us. I don't want to call it an obsession because I've done the same thing as well. Who gets like a specific fixation on finding stuff about that person, and then they expand it like by themselves. So with a lot of the actors and like just different people bring it up, it's like unless you have someone who specifically wants to make your thing bigger, your article bigger, it's just going to be smaller. Uh, yeah, Philip, it's my opinion that that he was one of the greatest actors of all time. It's not even good things happening to bad people. It's doing something horrible and then getting acknowledged for it. That's why originally I was going to make a video on Jeffrey Dahmer's dad, who's like 84, 85, for like around his birthday. And I was going to talk about how, it's so sad that this man who has done nothing wrong, committed no crimes ever, is only going to be remembered for being the father of this crazy, sick, twisted individual. And it really sucks because as much as I complain about like them making movies about murderers and whatnot, if they made a movie about Dahmer's dad, I would not have one complaint because they would actually be promoting the lifestyle of someone that was a productive member of society his entire life, who has this like weird like curse put upon him by the actions of his son. I think that'd be a hell of a premise for a just it could be a movie, it could be a limited series. That'd be way more interesting than seeing the same old. Well, everyone thought I was a good person until they found bodies in my cooler. Story that's been done to death. Oh yeah, I remember you saying that you can be a dependable member of society and not be noticed, but if you murder a bunch of people, you get a nickname and leave an infamy. Yeah, I mean, hey, I looked up Ramirez about maybe 8, 9 months ago, somewhere toward at the beginning of the year or late last year. I saw tributes to that man, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, isn't it sad that all his victims, some of whom lived way longer than him, you could probably, if you actually track down people that knew them, they could tell you different stuff. It's like his victims don't get any tributes. Nobody makes a video showing all their little pictures and stuff, but the guy that went around and killed innocent people that did nothing to him. Okay, he gets acknowledged in that format. So it's sad. And the reason I bring up the stuff with Leonardo, because there are a lot of people who are very important, who did what are productive things, good things, and they still don't get acknowledged by other people. If you're a big enough criminal, you'll get a movie. And like I said, what's ironic is you have people who actually defend this by saying, "Well, if you're a normal person, it's the same old thing over." It's like, but with the killers, it's the same story over and over. Like literally, all of them. This is the film. Oh, look at me, I'm a normal person. Oh, there's somebody over there. And then, they have this happen maybe three, four more times, and there's like a little side plot of the police get catching all up to them and what. But again, it's like I don't see how you look at all this material being made on people who have what's pretty much the same type of crime, and then with more, sometimes they kill more than other persons that live in a different state, whatever. It takes longer to get caught. The same basic type of crime. While you try to tell me, oh, they're getting this attention because what they're doing is so special and unique. It's like there are a whole bunch of murderers. Like literally, I could do a 10-hour stream just name dropping murderers, giving a little summary. Like it's really not that much of a more significant thing than anything else you can do. You get the irony of that, right? Like, oh yeah, we can't talk about people that do productive stuff because there are too many of them and they don't stand out. But then you're gonna do a bunch of movies about murderers where it's literally the same plot every time. Person pretends to be normal until they get caught doing evil stuff. I tell you, people have the weirdest positions online. They'll drive you nuts. You have to accept everything that a woman do in society when she goes through emotional problems with the men in her life and deal with her cheating back and from boomerang ways. Yeah, we already showed that on what was that Thursday? By the way, I actually had another lady on Discord. This is last Friday or Thursday. Send me like her account, and I was thumbing up some of the stuff, and they're gonna talk about I love you. I was like, no, stay away from me with that. Don't ever write that to me again. So they want you to get roped into that stuff so much, and like I said, it always leads to the same certain doom. Yeah, for thumbing up some vids. Which I do it with pretty much anybody that sends me their account that isn't a jerk. Talk about that's their way of saying thank you that is like very unique. I'm like, no, don't ever say it to me again. So there's always this like if you're a single guy talking to some chick, there's always this weird erotic subtext, which usually comes from them. Because like if I've said before, I don't even care about trying to get one of them anymore because it's the same lies. Those empty words that don't mean squat. Yeah, it's designed to like gas you up and trick you. I mean, hey, if you want to see somebody gas me up, you got a 9-minute recording in that video. You can go watch again. Don't believe him ever at any no more. A bunch of con artists with triangles. That should be the name of the movie on them. Imagine that was actually a movie, con artists with triangles. It's like a bunch of chicks go on like different websites and talk to men or like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I feel such a connection with you. And then like they start reneging in the coming days and whatnot. And the cycle repeats itself every week. No, I'm sick of that. That is so overdone and repetitive. But we already talked about on Saturday how they want you to be their slave. Oh my god. That was funny when I was with my mother. I was playing this Frank Sinatra song. She was like, "Oh, who's that?" which again, it's like one of the most famous musicians of all time. You don't know who that is? And I wasn't just playing any old random song. It's what whatever. It's that same thing of like, hey, here's another very influential person that we're not going to acknowledge for some damn reason. Yeah, it's really sad. But I don't know. I've seen a lot of people where the only actors they actually like. I remember this one time I asked this person, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, but who their favorite actors were was somebody on Skype, and everybody they named was a contemporary person, and it was like, and I didn't try to shame, I didn't say anything, about the choices they made, but I guess I thought it was really disappointing that you've had acting as a medium for like just for a long time, right? As a recorded medium for the last 60, 70, 80, it just goes way back, right? And the only people you can name are all people who are currently doing stuff. It'd be like if you said, name your top 10, I don't know, best politicians of all time, right? Just as an example. And everybody I name is currently in office or has been out for a few years, or, they're all people who are contemporary. It's like, well, I mean, this is, it's cool that you pick those people, but this has been going on for literally hundreds of years. Surely somebody who's not contemporary would make the list because it goes back to that thing of like recentism. Yeah, and that's probably why I protect these men that do crimes and wait for them to come back home from jail. That's why. Oh, remember, was it venting? Chicks don't like intercourse, according to the lady that we screenshotted. They don't like intercourse. It's only men. That's why when a woman gets pregnant, it's because she woke up and got the big stomach disease. They don't enjoy when they get a boyfriend. They just hold hands and talk to each other. They don't enjoy any of the stuff we do. God, man, like I said, when you listen and you read some of the stuff people are on this website, it's like a cartoon. Like I expect somebody that's making a movie or a screenplay or the script for like a Twilight Zone TV show to be in my comment section typing up these concepts and ideas. Yeah, this one person on Discord messaged me to say that they were like grounded or some kind of thing. That's why they hadn't been on. There are a lot of people that don't go on that site every day, so I didn't even like notice. I noticed they hadn't been online, but I just didn't think there. I needed an explanation, like whatever. I hadn't even seen Philip before. It's always some new character. It really goes to show you. It really goes to show how people think you can only be remembered if you're famous, right? And then when we bring up multiple instances of people who did important things of like high notoriety that are still not remembered, it like shatters that illusion. Because you can be famous and then like still not known by everybody or acknowledged, even by people who are into the stuff that you were involved with, which I think is very sad. And it's like it just shows the laziness of people, I guess the way to put it. And I have somebody calling me on Discord, and I'm not answering that on the stream. Um, just as an example, I like I would say I am into horror movies, but it's like if I say I'm a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, but then I don't know who made it. I'm like, oh, who's Wes Craven? It's again, it's a thing of like it's one thing to have heard the name of that stuff, but to say you're a fan of it and then not know who created it, I think is insane. It was funny when my friend was like, "Oh, the creator is always more well known, is always lesser known." It's like, no, that's not true. We brought that up last time we talked about this, but it's like, there are a lot of people who know what Dragon Ball is and know who Akira Toriyama is, but don't have never read Doctor Slump. You know, hell, there are a lot of people who know who Stan Lee is, but they haven't read his original X-Men run, which is like 18 issues, the Spider-Man run, which is like 100 issues, Fantastic Four run, which is arguably one of the most important comic book runs of all time, whatever, because it was like 100 and it's what starts him and Kirby collaborating together. So even if people know what he made, they still haven't actually read the stuff that he made with the characters. So basically, to them, it's like, oh yeah, that's the creator. Uh, I'm going to completely ignore what they actually like. I know what they did, but I haven't read any of what they actually wrote, which I think is kind of funny. Like, imagine if like Japanese comic fans were that way, right? Like, oh, here's Boruto. Okay, this is not. I know that Kishimoto created Naruto, which is the parent series for this, but I'm only going to read Boruto. Damn, that stuff will drive you nuts because again, it's like people have. There are multiple examples. They know who an actor is, and we know. You know what? Just another example. Um, that there are people who know who. So like people know who Stephen King is, the writer. I guarantee you, most people who know who that man is haven't read all of his books. That's a bet I'll take. You get the idea that there are plenty of people who are like more well known than like the stuff they created because some of the stuff they make isn't that well known. Like Ralph Abernathy was the right hand man for Martin Luther King. Like it almost goes completely unacknowledged compared to King. And when he put out his autobiography, the only thing anybody wants to talk about are the parts where he claims that King had an affair or had affairs, which like I said before, I don't really care about. It doesn't diminish what else the man did, but you get the idea that it's like more people will know who that man is than have actually read his book. So the creator is more well known than the thing they made. But you see how it goes back. It just keeps like there are more and more examples of the person who made it being more famous than the thing itself. So I said people don't even think when they make up these responses. They're just like, let me just say something. Let me just throw something out there. I think I'm doing a decent job of explaining. It's not about everybody needing to know who someone is, even though I would like that. Um, as many people as possible. It's simply a matter of you can do influential things, you can do important things, and you can still be completely forgotten like a regular old person that didn't do anything their entire existence. John Quincy Adams was one of he was the first president to get elected to an office after holding the office of the presidency. You can remember the House of Representatives. And he was one of the earliest proponents of abolishing slavery in the United States' history. But he gets completely overshadowed by Lincoln, which admittedly most of them do, except for like FDR and Washington. But you get the idea that still a very important person, still minimally remembered. Then with him, he was overshadowed by his dad and the person that was like his protege when they were in the house. That's crazy. Just can't win. It's kind of the reverse version, ironically enough, with the older Bush and the younger Bush. I've said before, I think the older Bush is the one of, if not the most underrated president in all of the history of the United States. Um, he was someone who, despite being a Republican, was moderate on environmental issues. While he did get involved in the Gulf War, organized it in such a way as to not be there for years, like his son would later do with Iraq and Afghanistan. I just think he was a very smart, um, competent person that I really would not have mind, just if we had some alternate history to see what a second term of him as president would look like. But it's like the reverse for him, where in the case of the Adams, it's the dad that overshadows the son. And in the case of the Bushes, it's the dad that's overshadowed by the son. Dad is way like I would give if I were to be grading, I'd probably give the older Bush a 7 or 8 out of 10 as just as a commander in chief, and then the younger one probably like a 1 or 2 or 3. If I'm being like really nostalgic, hey, remember when I was 7 and Hurricane Katrina happened? Oh yeah. But it got so insane with the overshadowing that literally the older Bush, when he died, you had people who were like actually happy just because Bush 43's dad died. Like they were celebrating over something he had no control on. Now, one of my proudest streams is the one I did on him before he died. It was like 6, 7 months before that. He was the last Republican president my paternal grandpa voted for. After that, it was just straight Democrats, which I think does suggest, they went in the more conservative direction after Bush 41 left. So you get the idea. If you want to go even more recent, there are a lot of people who know who. I mean, he was president what 5 years ago. There are a lot of people who know who Obama is, but they can't. It's very difficult for them, right, to name accomplishments of his or things that he did, if you want to call it that, outside of Obamacare, which like that should disturb you. This man was president for 8 years, and you can only remember one thing he did. Nobody gets how like insane that is. Like you're in office for that long, and they only recall one thing. They couldn't tell you that he put 2 people on the Supreme Court. They couldn't tell you about him restoring relations with Cuba, being the first president to visit there since Calvin Coolidge, 88 years prior. They couldn't tell you about the Iran nuclear deal, which was this big joint venture between the U.S. and multiple other countries to stabilize Iran's nuclear programs. They couldn't tell you how he took us from 2 wars to 7, invading, I don't even want to name all of them, Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, Libya. In the case of Yemen starting, or rather being complicit in the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. I think that's sad. Like I believe it's really because even though I'm not a fan of that man in the slightest, I still think people should know what he did. I'm not saying any of the stuff I've said to slander or make it up. I can find articles that go along with every comment I made about him. It really does go to show you how people think you can only be remembered if you're famous. I mean, a lot of times non-famous people can be remembered by someone who becomes famous and then they're elevated in such a way. Like, you know, just what's a good example? We talked about The Simpsons before. It's like, yeah, Matt Groening named the family, or at least most of the family, with the exception of Bart, after his family. Like his dad's name was Homer. Is not, we discussed this before, I believe. But you get the idea that if you can have if someone who is famous that you were influential in the life of, and then there's like some semblance of importance that you get from that. I can see my chat died. I got to find a way to resurrect it. Yeah, if things go the way that I plan for them to go, I should be able to do another DVD video tomorrow. Hopefully, people will watch and comment. It is funny that like the one person who inquired if I ever play as killer was like, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to upload any matches of that so you can not watch again, so you cannot comment again. It really is crazy that people just will not leave comments because that stuff like boosts your engagement. Like if I was getting 100 comments every video I did, I would be growing like crazy because it would be this rapid increase of people seeing my stuff and responding to it. Like yeah, I turned off the like button, but it's you still have the same effect. It's so sad that like the thing that made me feel comfort about not being remembered is that most people aren't remembered. Like even people who have done very important things get forgotten, which is it's such a crime. That's such a what's the way of saying it, like nihilist view of it, like, oh yeah, it's fine, I'm gonna get not remembered because most people aren't. Which is true. Even people I consider to be 10 times, 100 times more significant than me don't get remembered or acknowledged, you know? It's not even just people who are deceased, like you know, there are plenty of people that are alive that don't get their due. I remember at one point I was gonna make my top 10 greatest like it was gonna be called top 10 forgotten greatest African Americans of all time, where it's like all the ones I think are not discussed as much as they should be, just on one list, like ranked. So like you wouldn't see MLK on there, you wouldn't see Malcolm X, you wouldn't see, just like Obama, any of them, but he wouldn't be on there anyway. But you get the idea that they would it would be entirely composed of people that, I think are important, did something of great significance. Like I really have a big soft spot for Abernathy because it's like he took over for King after he died, and then he wasn't like going with the whole Democrats or the way of the future thing that a lot of I guess black leaders in quotations of today like to do. Like when he endorsed Reagan, it was like a big sin, and how dare you? They acted like he committed this great crime by endorsing a Republican for president. It's really sad, but it does go to show you that um, if you weren't king, your things of significance that you did during the civil rights movement were pretty much not acknowledged. That a lot of what happened with King is like martyrdom, just seeking over or seeping over to where they become more acknowledged or revered in death than they were in life, which I think is really insane. That was one of the reasons I kept bringing up Rokana and a lot of my different stuff. It's like that's a congressman that I think is very significant in terms of when he was like joined up with the progressives, and also the fact that he does certain stuff the other ones don't do. Like he'll actually go on Jimmy Dore's channel. Like Dore complains about them not coming to speak to him because they're cowardly, and then he comes and he gets yelled at. Which again, it's like I respect him for doing that because um, he acknowledges the existence of this man and like still tries to speak to him in like a calm manner, like whereas the other ones don't say anything back because they're all so famous and big celebrities now from winning an election. Man, the Kotsky merchant really left the final comment. Imagine that stream for like another whole hour, and it's like that's the last comment anybody wrote. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not too upset. But it was interesting that my friend could like he knew who RDJ was. He knew who Scarlett Johansson was. It's like yeah, those you know who they are because they're in contemporary stuff that you see. But it goes back to this thing of how it's so sad to me, the idea that you can, let's say, be an actor, right, and be in stuff that's important, gets a lot of attention, sells millions of tickets, all that, and because it didn't come out last year or last week or a few years ago, you get completely, forgotten. I think that's really disturbing, because I'm of the opinion that the 1958 Dracula is something that is timeless. That I would still show that to someone now if they want to see a movie about Dracula. We don't have to remake something every 8 seconds. I don't know, I'm not a fan of remakes. I'm not a fan of taking some that already exists. Like if you want to do a sequel to something, I'm all for it. If you can get the original actors back, or um, maybe a reboot that doesn't just tell the same story again with different faces. But I just, most of the remakes I see, I'm not impressed by. And a lot of it has to do with this idea that no franchise is ever allowed to just end anymore. Like everything has to go on forever. A good example of this would be Nightmare on Elm Street. So for with that series, I was of the opinion that after Freddy versus Jason, they should have just like wrapped it up. Just that would have been the end of it. Because I mean, the person who's most commonly associated with that series, arguably more than Wes Craven because he's not on screen, is Robert Englund, who played Freddy for 8 movies straight. So when you don't have him playing Freddy anymore, it's like I don't think that's just some role you can then take and give to somebody else and make a crappy new CGI fest version of the same film that I think still looks great and is a triumph in the special effects and practical effects department. 30 years later. So it's just kind of annoying that you know, they have to keep everything going. It's the same way with Dragon Ball. Like I remember, that era of like early 2000s going all the way up until the Battle of the Gods movie came out, where like the only new thing we had was that one OVA with Vegeta's brother, and it was just all games and like maybe some figures here and there, but that was about it. And then when Super got announced, I was so excited, and then it was like, oh, never mind. Be careful what you wish for; you might receive it. I remember when the Super manga came out; it was like around the same time the Boruto manga came out, and the Boruto manga started with a recap of the movie, which came out, I'd say, some months earlier, the year before. And I was like, wow, both of these major series are so damn lazy that for months I am forced, if I want new content from them, to read a retelling of something I already saw. That was why I was of the opinion that the manga for Super was better than the show, because the manga's version of the Universe 6 term I thought was pretty good, as far as like things made sense, and it skipped over the Golden Frieza stuff, which I was completely content with because I thought the show's version of that was terrible. Hey, I'm not a master of the mystic arts. I can't resurrect my chat. But no, it really does seem like every series goes on forever, and the problem with doing that is a lot of actors are not, they're not immortal. So I think it would be best if some of this stuff would just be finished, you know, instead of retelling it or trying to have it go on, for until everyone that was originally involved with it was deceased. It's the same thing with Back to the Future. I'm so happy they haven't made any more of those. Like I haven't even seen those, and I already know that if they remade them or tried to make another one with new people, it would just be a crappy knockoff of the classic original. Again, it's like, what's the point of that? I was looking at Envoy's comment, these empty words that don't mean squat. That's how I felt when I read that thing, and she couldn't understand why I was, annoyed with what she was typing. So I just let it be a mystery. I didn't want to ruin the mystique. There are a lot of important writers too, like just in comics. Like I know Roy Thomas. He had a 69 issue run of Avengers where like it introduced some of their classic villains. So I haven't read that yet. By the way, that's why I'm not going full commentary on it. Well, Claremont's on X Men, for example. Um, Most of the stuff people associate with that team comes from him. Like, he's the one that under the writing, Rogue joins, Storm joins, Wolverine joins. He didn't make Wolverine, but he made the like traits of the character, like the stuff with Japan, and then also I'm the best, there is what I do, and him saying Bub and all the rest of that. Um, Dark Phoenix Saga, Days of Futures Past. The list goes on. So most of the stuff that people really associate with that group comes from that particular writer. And I would say if any comic writer that didn't make a character or make a series, but like really redefined it, he probably is the guy that did that. Of anybody that like came and took something that wasn't theirs and then just reshaped it and made it their own. And it's just so sad that for someone who had such an influential and very objectively important comic run, uh, you don't really see him getting acknowledged the way that he should be. The series don't end because the companies want to milk as much money from it as possible. But that's the thing, right? It's like Dragon Ball ended. It was just merchandise. Like it was. I remember all we had were games, and sometimes there were some toys, and that was about it. I'm not even disagreeing that they use stuff to get more money, but it's just sad that like you can't. What's the way of saying it? What happens with these movie series is that they just keep when they reboot, they try to make a first movie that's always almost every time a crappier version of the original version. Like you don't see them rebooting Sonic and making a new Sonic game, and they're like, "Oh, forget the one that came out on the Sega Genesis in 1991." It's like, no, that game is still something that is acknowledged in terms of its significance, still played by people. Well, I'm glad because we don't need any crappy retelling of something we already saw. Yes, Theo, we were talking about people who are important that get forgotten, and he was one of them because I had multiple people who said they didn't know who he was, which I thought was insane because I think he's arguably uh, the greatest actor of all time in terms of just the quality of their roles and the prominence and stuff in which he was involved with. So that's why we put that there. I mean, it was just like with the Legacy Remembers from right there, where I had Jack Kirby in the thumbnail. It's like that's a very important man, and it's sad that you have people who either saw something. In the case of Lee, saw something he was in but don't know who he is, or are familiar with the creations of something that Kirby made, for example, but don't know who he is. I think that's really pathetic. Because again, these aren't just random street urchins. These are people who claim to like this stuff that don't know who someone is. Universal's plans to make a remake of Back to the Future with Tom Holland as the lead role. Oh, he's in everything now. He's going to be Ben 10. He's going to just everything that has like a brown hair protagonist. You'll see him being. I'm surprised they haven't tried to get him for Mario yet. He was with the chick from Star Wars in that one failed horrible film where you can like hear people. It was some crazy movie where she was wearing like a blonde wig or had her hair dyed blonde. They're going to use him to bring in as much fans as possible. Yeah, but it's just it's funny to me that like Every movie, everything you can think of it where there's like a brown haired lead character, you can expect his name to get brought up. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get him to play Naruto. Like, oh, dye your hair blonde and put a little headband on, you can do it. I don't want any more live action versions of anything ever again. Like if you have a cartoon, don't make a live action version of it because it's always worse and significant. Just like it's just has a bad track record. That's the way to put it. If he plays live action Naruto, I'm done with that series. Well, look, I mean, I'll always go back to part one and say this was good. I mean, like they did evolution for Dragon Ball. Everybody, I'll never forget what the last Airbender, what Nickelodeon did to them, where they're like, "You thought you're gonna have a season 3 and 4? No." And then the creators had to combine all their ideas for 2 seasons into one. And then after they finished the show, Nickelodeon ordered some more episodes, and that's how we got Korra. What a bunch of douchebags! Like, you will finish. You will take your 40 episodes and make them into 21. And then they do that, and they're like, "Oh, never mind. Here's 12 more." But oh, we just ended the story. No, these networks just we. I did a whole stream just talking about like different instances where some network ruins a show because they have some ridiculous mandate. I went back and watched Dragon Ball Evolution. It wasn't that bad. Got the base. Whatever. No, I'm not about to sit here and participate in revising the reception of that movie. Like that movie and The Last Airbender are the from what I've seen the most universally despised adaptations of cartoons that are like well liked out of anything, and they should stay that way. Why do you think they didn't get a sequel? They had a post credit scene for both of them, or excuse me, a sequel hook for both of them. Neither one got a sequel because they suck. Yeah, that thing was horrible. Like literally everybody said that. I'm not even a fan of Super, but I'll take those little one movie every 2, 3. I'll take that 30 times over them doing another live action film. They need to just leave that alone. I want to see for myself instead of just going off what everyone else was saying. Well, I saw for myself when it came out, and I was not impressed. It was the same thing with The Last Airbender. That thing's considered one of the worst movies ever made. Thanks a lot, M. Night. It sucks too because there's a lot of like stuff you could do with more Avatar content. Like, I mean, we have that 70-year period between The Last Airbender and Korra, and we have some books that expand on some comics. But you get the idea that if they wanted to make like a animated film that just adapts one of those books or tells some other new story, I'd be completely fine with that. Like, why dedicate resources to crap nobody wants? Who asked for a film that takes 20 something episodes and squeeze them down like that and cuts out a bunch of significant stuff and has characters' names mispronounced? Like, who wanted that? What do you think about the CGI? There is no CGI Dragon Ball Z movie. There hasn't been a new Dragon Ball Z movie since Resurrection F. Like, what are you talking about? Okay, that's Dragon Ball Heroes. It's not Dragon Ball Z. That's not even a movie. That's like some weird show where it's just a bunch of characters doing strange stuff. Like I'm not. I watched what the first episode of that, and I was like, yeah, we'll never turn this on again. Also, I didn't want to spoil this because I know that James has been trying to keep this hidden, but he's actually going to launch a new documentary series about different men that he and women that he thinks are like upstanding citizens in his life and in other people's lives and in history. And it's going to be called James X James Heroes. So he's going to be highlighting all these important, benevolent characters. Imagine if that actually was like a thing. Like you're like, you got me. I got all my Google Doc scripts ready right now. I'm putting them in the editor. Now, Dio, if you were talking about the superhero movie thing, I still have no opinion on it. Like, I'm of the opinion that we've seen very little of it, and I don't know enough about it yet to have an opinion. I hope it's not the Goku and Vegeta show that Broly was, and that all of Super is basically. But because we haven't seen Vegeta in anything for it yet, I don't think. I think there might he's probably I have no doubt he's going to be in it, but I just hope that they actually stick to what it looks like and focus on Pan. Because like any other character, I'm fine with them focusing on other than those two. It's just something different for once. So I would be happy to see that. I'll instantly, if this movie is about anyone that's not Goku or Vegeta, I'll instantly like it more than 90% of the Super anime and the Broly movie, which that's like a very low bar anyway. So I hope the trailers aren't misleading me. I remember when the first episode of Super came out, there was Goten and Trunks, just like getting some water. Like it looked as if the whole show was going to be about them, or they were going to be the main focus, and then like for the rest of the show, they don't even do anything. So I'm used to having that tease, like that trick, like, oh, you thought it was about them? I got you. Wait, Goten and Trunks were in Super. Don't play with me. They actually did do a good job of using Trunks, like present Trunks during the future Trunks arc, because I did like him interacting with his future version. But it just kind of sucks that they didn't let him actually do any fighting, because it's like this is the first time we've seen Vegeta with both versions of his son that like were from Z, and like you don't actually like, why not have the three of them fight together? But that show just had so many different ideas it threw out the window. It's kind of sad that Dragon Ball lore is being strangled by the fandom's obsession with Goku and Vegeta. It's the fandom's obsession. It's the writer's obsession. They won't let them use anybody else. That's why I don't even talk about the manga anymore. It's like I don't read it unless like we don't get spoiler leaks, and I have to go see what happens. But other than that, I'm not interested in it more often than not. Every time I read the Dragon Ball Super manga, I just think about how good Dragon Ball Z was. make you fall for something else. Hey, but there's so much irony in like, oh yeah, I'll be forgotten, right? But not because I'm a nobody, but because they don't remember anybody unless you do something evil. And even a lot of them, they don't, like what's a good example? Again, there are a lot of like murderers, and it's like the same three or four that really get discussed and brought up over and over, and then the rest of them are just kind of like in different tier lists of importance, if you want to use that term, infamy. He's he'll go down the dude. It's funny because every history book I ever read, like they never make any mention of these crazy people. Like when I was in high school, all the high schools I went to, right? They had history books, and they would have like, let's say, a page on the presidents. They would have, just like basic, like they didn't bring up any musicians, any actors, um, any killers. Like that's why it's funny. Like no history book I ever read brought up any of these damn people because they're not important. They're just a bunch of douchebags that do awful things that because we like edgy crap get acknowledged. Like I'm not even playing. If I went out and killed 10 people, I would have, and I was like still somehow able to do streams from prison or some other capacity. I would have thousands of people watching me. Like it would be instant stardom. And yeah, they might have more downvotes and upvotes, but it's like they would like, or they would at least be intrigued by what I was saying more so than if you're a normal person who acts in a sane manner that is encouraged by society. Just like you have a lot of people who try to tell you that talking about chicks, like in a disparaging way, is bad, right? Like, which even though this isn't every chick we've mentioned before. It's like criticizing the behavior of specific ones. But then every time you do a video on that stuff, look at the views compared to everything else. If it was so bad, why do people want to watch it so much? From what I heard, Toriyama actually probably can go on the new man. I don't even believe in main character. That I'm so sick of that stupid term. I always just leave that term alone. It's like Z is the only series I've ever seen where the quote unquote main character is getting less screen time than, let's see, Vegeta, Gohan, obviously, Piccolo, and Krillin. Like there's two arcs of that series for each where each of those characters has more screen time than Goku. Vegeta had more screen time than Goku during Namek. He had more screen time than him during the Cell Saga. You could argue during the Saiyan Saga too, because there's a big part of that arc where it's just Goku flying and then Vegeta like spectating as Nappa fights everybody. I'd say it's probably like even in that because you do have like the more Goku centric stuff at the start with the training. Piccolo has more screen time than Goku during the Saiyan Saga because he's there actually fighting and like again it's just Goku flying around. He has more screen time than him during the Android Saga definitely, and most especially during the Buu Saga because there's a whole period of that where Goku just went back to heaven or out the other world. And then Gohan has more screen time than Goku in literally every arc other than not even with Buu because he still is like there for a big chunk of that too. So outside of the Buu arc, Gohan has more screen time than him. Krillin has more screen time than him during Namek, during the Cell Saga. You could argue maybe during the Saiyan stuff because he fights he fights Nappa and like Goku is just flying a little bit. So I don't even I don't take main characters seriously. Now, if you're talking about something like Naruto, it's like yeah, because there's whole periods where like every character that's not Naruto in that series just disappears. But with Z, no, I don't believe in the main character for that. I believe it has main characters, but not a main one. No, I think it's just like this. If their people only associate him as the lead protagonist of Z, because of the Buu saga, like taking the person who beats the central antagonist away from Gohan. But everything in between that was other people getting focused on. They should come out with the new season of Dragon Ball and just hell no. You can have that. I'm good. I'm sick of Saiyans. Like if you're not Gohan or Future Trunks and you're saying I'm tired of you, we've seen enough of them. Look at me, I have a tail and my hair can turn 500 colors. Like I don't care. I don't know what James is laughing about, but I would be laughing too if someone actually thought that was a good pitch. Hey, Dragon Ball Super revolves around Saiyans. Let's make another show about Saiyans. People will never see that coming. Like, no, thank you, sir. I'd rather see Gohan become the main character and him and Future Trunks find the androids to defend Earth. Uh, like I said, I like part one of Naruto. After that, it just goes down here. Um, but yeah, of course, Z makes the most sense. Z's the one that inspired all these other ones. It's like you're surprised the thing that they all like are inspired by is better than them. Who's another actor that gets it? Oh, with Alec Guinness. I remember the story with him where like he got upset that people would only ever associate him with Star Wars. He played Obi-Wan in the original trilogy. And it was ironic too because Peter Cushing, who played Tarkin in A New Hope, he was like very, you know, what's the way of saying it? Content with his role and like wished that his character had lived on so he could play him in the sequels. So it was like it's really comedic how like the actor that gets to come back three times to play the same character is like disillusioned with the series and being associated with that character, but then the one who only gets to be in one movie is like, yeah, I would have liked to have kept playing that role. I just thought that was like ironic. People in this generation should stick with instead of because it's way out of its time than ever. I mean, hey, if I don't even know what Digimon does anymore. I had like one game from them and like 10 years ago, and that was it. They need to step it up. Super Saiyan, but only the first and only form makes no sense for there to be forms above it. Like I said, it only to me the forms only start getting ridiculous with the Buu saga because that's when you literally have forms that have no narrative purpose whatsoever. Like there's an entire build up to Super Saiyan 2 throughout the whole Cell saga, and then 3 is just introduced as something Goku had in his back pocket but didn't feel like pulling out for whatever reason. So I don't that's Buu saga is when everything just starts going down the rails. But you can have it if you want. And where did Dio go? He came here to ask who I thought of this movie where we only have one trailer and left. He was like, all right, I got my question answered. I'm out. Considering it was played up as this legendary warrior. I'm just explaining that in my opinion, I think the Cell saga did a good job of handling the forms that were involved with it. I didn't even know anybody was still on Facebook. Like the website that's rising the most is Instagram in terms of like users making new accounts on there. With Twitter, for example, there's just more activity from people who've always been there than there are of like new people signing up. So like you're more likely to see people who've been there for like 2, 3, 4 years than some new person come on and be like, I'm gonna write crazy stuff to people now. I can't believe. Yeah, James, I thought that site was the new MySpace. I've used my account there in like 4, 5 years. Like what? I'm really shocked. Dude, do you remember the video I did on like the why do women with boyfriends like talking to me? Do you remember that video? The chick on that video was like, "Oh yeah, I meet people on here and I give them my Facebook." I'm like, I didn't even know anybody still used that site. I haven't used my Facebook in 8 years. There's been a whole 2 presidential terms of you not using your account. Yeah, I didn't know anybody still did. Wow. I mean, hell, we might as well just go back to MySpace at this point. Oh yeah, that Facebook scare really showing that they care. No, I was saying that Instagram actually like has proven that it is increasing in terms of its users. That it's like people are more active on there than ever before. Like it's the fastest growing social media site. Like Twitter has slowed down, and Facebook is like almost non-existent with new people coming on there. So that's why I said, yeah, I'm sure that you can say all these websites have different levels of popularity, but the one that's actually doing the best is Instagram. Let me get my provocative pose in for my picture for my new thumbnail. Over and moving my couch because I'm bored. What was I gonna say? I think I pretty much discussed all I need to talk about. It's just sad that you have so many important people that get completely ignored and forgotten, even by people that are into the stuff that they were involved with. Like I don't like Dan Slott in the slightest. I think he's a complete clown. One of the worst runs I've seen on any comic ever. But he still, I would say, is an influential, or at least somebody to know if you read like any Spider-Man stuff over the last 10 years because how long he was on that book. So you see how it's not even just, oh, I like this person. It's acknowledging their overall significance. Like you can objectively acknowledge the importance of someone without liking them. Like I despise Bush 43, but he's still one of the most important presidents ever. A lot of his policies are still kept in place by his two successors. So it's not even about just, I'm a fan of this person. It's, here's someone that is important within the respective field that you have interest in, and this is why. I got the last comment is James laughing. He's gonna keep me in mystery on what he was giggling about. It's like I don't want to get banned, even though I'm not actually going to get banned ever. No, every time they make a remake of something, I want to vomit because like I've never seen a remake that was better than the original. At least in terms of movies, there have been some games where they add improvements, graphic wise. But you get the idea that when they remake a film, almost every time I've seen it done, it's not as good as the original. Which then goes back to the thing of like, why even bother making it in the first place? It's not like you're making some new story and experimenting. It's like, no, you're taking something that we already saw before and just using some different actors and I guess updated effects. Yeah, Trump is another person who is objectively worth remembering and important because prior to him winning, you really didn't have people who weren't a governor or a senator trying to run for president, and actually like being believed as having a legitimate chance of winning. Like his name recognition played a big role in that. Um, and ever since then, you've had now members of the House get talked about as potential candidates, which again 10 years ago was like a joke. Like I remember the era of, oh, if you want to run for president, you have to be a governor or senator. It was just this like, unbeknownst rule. But if you look at major candidates over the last 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in these elections, they were always a governor or a senator or the VP, one of those positions. The Lion King is a good example of that didn't need to be remade. Yeah, I just think remakes are a waste of time. Just let the original stay as it is and make another your own story. Like, we were talking about the one person said they didn't want sequels, but at least with a sequel, it's something different. Like, for example, I haven't seen Superman Returns since I was a kid, but I would rather have that over another origin story movie where they just say, "Oh, here's how he became a member of Planet Earth." Just I'd rather they just start him as Superman because everybody already knows the origin, and then go from there. Like, why do I have to keep seeing that same story retold? And that's why dating is more harder for the below average man. I don't even know what that is. Like, dude, if you saw some of the stuff that people write about me on this website, you would think I was like the new demon or something. Just below average, high value. I mean, come on. I don't like the way you look, so no woman would ever like you because they all have a monolithic mind. I don't even take that stuff seriously anymore. It's like a literal parody. Below average, man. Hell, the way they talk about me, you think I was bottom of the barrel. Dude, we talked about this on the New Era stream. It's like most of these chicks don't own anything. Nobody's ever heard of them. They're not tall. They don't go to the gym. And again, it's like you're supposed to accept that, but then if you want a date or a girlfriend, something that millions of men have had before, you have to engage in all these extraneous steps for that, like just to maybe get that, possibly. No, I don't like you, therefore you're literally, yeah. I mean, you saw the guy who compared me banning somebody on my channel to like being the dictator of a country. Like, you realize how that overstates my importance as just a content creator. Like, you're comparing getting banned on one channel out of millions on this website to a country where you cannot leave, you cannot say things that are disparaging about the person who runs the place. You get how, like, that's them actually like elevating me to this statesman type level over getting sick of them running their mouths in my chats and saying all this nasty stuff for no reason. I just think that's really crazy. You run your channel like a dictatorship. That's why I was allowed to trash talk you for an entire hour before you got rid of me. Hell, this one guy that got banned, he came back like 3 or 4 different times in a span of like a month, and he only ever got the reason he got yanked is because he started trying to, retcon and do revisionist history and say I didn't say what I actually said, and oh my, pretend that he didn't come on my stream and insult me. So that was why we got rid of him. Like, yeah, it's one thing to say get over it, or oh I didn't mean this, or I'm sorry, but another to try to actually act as if that wasn't you. So that's why that person got yanked. No, they act like that. If you don't have a girlfriend or a wife or get dates or whatever, you're the worst person that ever lived. Because remember, I had that broad try to tell me that because I said the B word, this is one of the reasons, right? You might not be able to get with women. It's like, yeah, so that's worse than being a dictator because there are plenty of people who have killed other people, who have led tyrannical regimes, had a girlfriend or a wife. I noticed that it's always people on the left calling people the I word and defending women like they're, yeah, cavalier. They call anybody, I believe that too because I've seen a lot of if you look up the I word, right, and like when it gets assigned to people, they try to say that like it has to do with being racist and sexist. And you know that a lot of left wing people like to say that right wing people are that way, right? So it goes along with that thing of like there's a political ideology that is supposed to be in tandem with not being able to get a woman, even though all the major Republicans in office right now, except for maybe Graham in South Carolina, all have a wife. Like it's really comical. I don't know venting. I mean, James, you know the rule. Every stream. I mean, hell, there's actually a guy that wrote some weird comment. I got rid of it after a few hours. I was like, no, I'm not gonna let this one stay up. Yeah, don't get too worked up over it, man. They do this every stream. Someone just comes on here writing some weird stuff. Remember the one guy that got offended because people donated to me? Like we were about to go in his bank account and force him to extract some coins. They will literally criticize just because you're not interested in relationships with women. Yeah. Because remember, if you're a woman that doesn't have a boyfriend, you're independent, you're strong, you're focused on yourself, and you have your priorities in order. But if you're a man who's single, there's probably something wrong with you. You might need to go to a mental hospital. It's like, they love picking up little stuff to label you. That good old inequality rears its head again. That's why when we did the one on Thursday, I was like, I already know one of them's going to come on here and write that. And then nobody did, to my surprise. And then after the one on Saturday, that crazy lady that won't leave, like just won't go away, was like, "Oh, I missed your stream. I was trying to talk to you about this woman that was like, no, I don't want to speak to you. Thank God it ended." You know what I'm talking about, James, the one that was like, "Oh, you want to be a player." So I was happy that it wrapped up quicker than I expected or intended. I was like, "What is she doing here?" Because like, if you thought, let's say, pretend you're a woman, right, and you think that there's a man who just wants to have intercourse with chicks, even if he doesn't actually say that, and there's no reason to reasonably believe that. But you speak of this person a very disparaging way. Wouldn't you leave them alone after you've said this about them? That you believe this very negative, nasty thing about them? Oh, by the way, I actually met somebody well, I didn't meet them on Saturday, but I'm talking to them for over a week. They called their ex boyfriend the I word, and I'm like, how the hell? And I was thinking to myself, okay, you're gonna say he's sexist, racist, whatever, but it's like, how is he a word that means like not being able to get with somebody if he was with you? Like you get where like now the term is even being used for people that were able to have like a partner. Like you get where it's just oh my god. No, James, every time I see her, I roll my eyes like, you again. I mean, they just don't accept people are really sick of chicks. We don't want to talk to them. They keep coming over here. Not interested in relationships. Well, you must be an I word and there's something wrong with you. By the way, there's this one server I'm in where I typed in the I word to see how many times it's been used. Apparently, it's been used by different people over 1,000 times in like 3 years. It's really nuts. Like that means every day somebody calls somebody that. I tell you, it's the new N word. It's an offensive term that people call each other sometimes, but is every time you see someone that's not using it as a member of that group or team, it's always an insult. Look, I'm gonna get off of here. I got some stuff I have to do. I'll stream again probably on Wednesday or Thursday, but definitely on Saturday. I'll try to put up another DVD video tomorrow. I won't make any promises because my editor is acting insane. So thanks for watching, James, Banana Merchant, Akatsuki Merchant, whatever you call yourself. Dio, who left a while ago, and then Envoy was here earlier. So I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your Monday.